Today, I'm giving some of you feedback on your feedback. If you take any kind of writing class, chances are that you'll be asked to give someone some kind of feedback at some point, whether that's a peer review on a research paper or a workshop of a poem. And if you've ever been serious about improving your work and been in one of those situations, then it's also likely that you've probably received feedback that was shallow, unhelpful, or even mean-spirited. It's unfortunate that for as large of a role as feedback often plays in writing classes, we don't often get a lot of formal instruction on how to do it well. But being able to give good feedback is an invaluable skill, whether as a writer or just as a person. I think I've been as dedicated to refining my ability to give feedback as I have been to refining my ability to write, and I know that I've learned at least as much about writing by giving other people feedback as I have from practicing writing on my own. In fact, I think some of the most valuable things that I learned in poetry school were how to give and receive feedback. Week after week, I gathered with my classmates and we talked about each other's poetry. And in that process, I practiced reading carefully. I began to understand what makes writing work, and I learned how to comment in ways that help writers to achieve their goals. Of course, that has obvious applications in my work as a writing teacher now, but even in other ways, I've had colleagues and coworkers mention how much they've appreciated the time and attention I've spent to look over and review documents and other projects that they've given me. So even if you're not a professional writer or teacher, chances are that you'll find yourself in a position to give somebody feedback at some point in time, and when that opportunity arises, it's really important to do it well. So that's exactly what we're talking about today. I want to show you some qualities of good feedback and not so good feedback, as exemplified by comments that I've received over the last few months, so that you'll have a better idea of what you should be doing if the opportunity arises. And since it's illustrative, but also sensational, let's begin with a particularly nasty one. Now, a couple of things before we get started. I'm sure you cyber sleuths could track down these comments and give the commenters all kinds of grief, but don't. For one, that would be unproductive behavior, and that's not what we're about here. Second, though, it's crucially important to recognize that when we're giving somebody feedback, we're only talking about the quality of the creative work in its current state. Nothing we say is intended to be, nor should be taken as, a critique of the person who wrote it. When somebody says that your novel has a slow beginning, that is not a coded way of saying that you are a bad writer and an even worse person. It really just means that your reviewer found the beginning of your novel to be slow. So I don't know anything about these people, and it's not even really worth thinking about. All we're doing is talking about a couple of comments made in a public forum, and we don't need to think about the people attached to them. It's just not worth it, so let's not do it. Okay, now that we've agreed to be civil and professional about this, let's go to a comment about the genre and volume of music in a video that I released a little over 2 years ago. I hate the music. I don't like that kind of music, and it is distracting. If I had to have music while at the same time listening to you, I could. I don't need your help for that. Please stop that. Such conviction, such candor, such miserably inadequate feedback. Let's talk about why. First things first, the truest purpose of feedback is to help somebody make their work better. The goal is to help them accomplish their artistic vision. Sometimes feedback takes a dark turn toward appropriation when the reviewer focuses not on how the creator can refine their craft, but on how the reviewer would have done it if they had done it themselves. This is something good editors know not to do, and it's a practice that careful reviewers can adopt as well. The creator is the one in the position to make decisions about how to change or modify their work, and as a reviewer, you're never in a position to tell somebody what they have to do. Unless, of course, you're a teacher and somebody didn't format their citations correctly, but again, that's not a creative decision, just a technical requirement. So, as polite as the please is, the please stop that tends more toward appropriation than constructive feedback. Honestly, even from the beginning, we weren't close to good feedback, but we got a lot farther from it when that imperative verb showed up. Good feedback informs, it never commands. Oh, but what else? Related to feedback that seeks to control the creator's decisions is feedback that's really rooted in a matter of personal taste or aesthetic preference. So the fact that a viewer doesn't like a genre of music that I happen to like enough to have included in a video is an irreconcilable problem that I can't do anything about. If you put a lot of work into writing a fantasy novel and then your reviewer says, "I didn't think it was very good, actually I prefer westerns," They're just telling you their aesthetic preference, and that's not helpful. They're not doing anything to help you make your fantasy novel better. They're just saying they wished you had done something different in the first place. But this can show up in smaller ways too. You might have written a perfectly readable and elegant sentence, and then your reviewer happens to be a stern and joyless Hemingway enthusiast who insists that you've used too many words. That doesn't mean that you've done anything wrong. It just means that your reviewer likes eating dry saltines and that they have a palate for prose to match. Some people like unsalted French fries, and others prefer theirs with truffle, garlic, and cheese. Some people like Hemingway and others prefer Hopkins. But both are fixtures of English language literature, and both represent distinct attitudes towards linguistic aesthetics. It's not a simple matter of right and wrong. And feedback that is rooted in only personal preference is feedback that nobody can do anything about, and it just isn't helpful at all. Ooh, but there's more. See, one of the most delightful and disappointing things about this comment is that it complains about something that's in a video that's relatively old that doesn't even reflect my approach to video editing or incorporating music now. So yeah, it's unfortunate that maybe the inclusion of music in that particular video isn't optimal, but there's nothing I can do to change a video once it's uploaded, short of remaking it completely, and it's just not really helpful to tell me to change something about my editing practice that I've already changed. Imagine if you were dressed in shorts and started heading out the door only to find that it was snowing, so you turned around, bundled back up, and made your way back to the front door, only to hear somebody say, "I can't believe you're going to go out in shorts. It's snowing outside and you should be wearing a coat." I mean, in that situation, what could you say other than, "Way ahead of you, bud"? Also, as a final note, this comment is pretty terse. Tone counts for a lot, especially when you're giving feedback, and a writer is much more likely to ignore or dismiss your suggestions if they don't perceive it as coming from a place of goodwill. A comment phrase like this is really easy to ignore because it doesn't seem to come from that place of goodwill. It doesn't appear to be interested in helping the creator to make their work better. It really seems invested in just making the reviewer more comfortable. But anyway, this is a drag. Let's talk about something better. So, YouTube drama out of the way, let's take a look at what feedback does when it's working well, with a comment that does a lot of good things. Thank you so much for explaining straightforwardly. If I may suggest, tune the music down. It is also a language of its own. It clouds what I need to hear from the topic that you are explaining. For me, and perhaps for others, it acts like a hypnotic tool which I don't need when trying to learn something. On the lighter side of things, American people seem to absolutely require music every second of every day. For us Europeans, I'd say not so much. There's a lot to like here. For one, we can already see a drastic shift in tone. When I was being taught how to teach, one of the things we were told was that when we comment on student papers, we should say something nice, offer a critique, and then say something nice. I don't know that that's exactly the formula we need to follow in every case, but it does highlight the importance of tone and the kind of relationship we want to have as reviewer and creator. This comment seems to come from a genuine place of wanting to make the work better. The viewer appears to recognize that the content has value, and that value would be enhanced if something were changed. And it's not just good because the compliment flatters my ego, it's good because it establishes the right kind of relationship from the beginning. This person understands my goal and isn't just trying to make things more comfortable for themselves, and that counts for a lot. I'm already more willing to listen. So good feedback is rooted first in a relationship of trust and goodwill. Now is not the time to show off how much smarter than the original creator you are or complain about the downfall of modern literature. Reviews given in a spirit of goodwill are much more likely to be received and acted upon in a similar spirit. And in a lot of ways, we could just take what was wrong with the previous comment and put it in reverse. So this critique doesn't appropriate the work, just taking it over and remaking it according to the commenter's preferences. Here, we get an acknowledgement that maybe the music is part of my creative vision, or maybe at least a consequence of my nationality, and that it doesn't need to be eliminated completely, but that it could perhaps be made less obtrusive. See, this commenter is not just telling me how they would do it. They're giving me the space to do what's important to me, while also helping me to pursue an even more important goal. Instead of issuing a command, this comment gives me information about how a viewer experienced the thing I made, and that's information I can use to make a change if I so choose. And in this case, It is a change that I wanted to make. This suggestion is also rooted in something other than an aesthetic difference. They're not just trying to get me to remake the video according to their own taste. Instead, they frame the feedback in terms of how the music constrained their ability to learn what the video was meant to teach. And that's something that I can actually do something about. I can't make something that everybody will like, but I can make changes that will make learning a little easier. So now I'm not just responding to an aesthetic preference, I'm responding to a technical limitation in my work. And this is where we get maybe the most important and overlooked aspect of good feedback. It's not just praise or critique. It's praise and critique with reasons. It doesn't just tell me that the music created an issue, it tells me why the music created an issue for this particular viewer. And that gives me the kind of information and understanding I need to make an informed decision about how I want to proceed. If somebody says that they don't like the music I picked, all I can say is that I do. But if they tell me that the inclusion of music in a particular way left them juggling two streams of information at once, then that helps me to understand that I could perhaps clarify the piece by simplifying the stimuli that I'm sending my viewers' way. So this is crucial. When you give somebody feedback, don't just tell them what you think. As much as you're able, also tell them why you think it. If there's something that you really like, say why you like it. And if you wish something were different, be sure to explain what's behind that desire. Writers and other creators can make better decisions in revision when the feedback they receive comes with explanations. The more you can do to let creators into your head as you experience their work, the better equipped they'll be to make useful and productive decisions going forward. So, to recap, good feedback has a few important qualities in any context that we might phrase as 5 rules. First, establish a good rapport with the creator. Tone matters, and feedback given with a nasty, arrogant, or other antisocial tone is easy to ignore or dismiss. But feedback that's clearly given in a spirit of goodwill is likely to be received in a similar spirit. Second, focus on helping the creator to achieve their goals. It's not about what you would have done if you had made the thing. It's about helping the creator to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish. And that means removing the things that get in the way of that goal and enhancing the things that facilitate it. If you're thinking about appropriating somebody's work, just don't bother. Go make something of your own. Third, make actionable recommendations. It's not about whether you liked something or not, it's about whether or not the piece is working as intended. Your personal preferences and tastes and opinions don't really matter because nobody can do anything about them. Focus instead on the work itself and on the things that can be done. For example, a writer can introduce a character sooner or cut out a slow section in the middle of their novel, but they can't give up on everything and start over just because you prefer memoirs. Fourth, be timely. If somebody is already aware of a problem or has even already fixed it, why would it be worth mentioning? That seems to be more about the reviewer's ego than the creator's creation. And fifth, above all else, just focus on giving the creator information about how you experience their work. If somebody has trusted you enough to put their work in front of you, it's because they want to know how you experience it. They're not asking you to fix it or take it over. Instead, they're just looking for information from outside of their own head that will help them to guide their decision-making going forward. So be candid and be honest, but don't think that your role is any more important than just passing along some data. Give the creator some credit. If they're really serious about improving their work, they can use the information you pass along to make meaningful changes without you having to issue any commands at all. So there you go, 5 rules for giving better feedback. But if we're really honest, this entire video was inspired by watching students give each other the same worthless comment on their essays year after year. Good job. I really don't have any suggestions. This was great. Because of my experience in poetry school and the way that I valued the thoughtful, constructive, and insightful feedback of my peers, I view the request for feedback as a sign of trust and the responsibility to give feedback as a solemn duty. It's not to be taken lightly and it's not to be given cheaply, but that doesn't mean you can't still have some fun along the way. Just make sure that you're saying something substantive and that you're actually helping the creator to refine their work. because empty praise is just as worthless as grumpy Gus grousing. But I guess that's where we'll leave it for today. Sometime soon, I'd like to talk about what we do after we receive feedback. Once you've gotten that data from your readers, how do you decide what to do with it? In the meantime, though, we've got more rhetoric and writing fun on the way, so don't go too far. And while you're here, maybe you'd like to leave some feedback on the music too. I will say right away that I think it does some important work, so getting rid of it entirely is off the table, but I am open to suggestions. I've spent a long time studying and practicing writing, but video editing has been a learn-as-I-go kind of thing, so if you've got the secret knowledge, fill me in. Just remember to keep the qualities of good feedback in mind. And who knows, I might even read what you have to say. So have a good week, and I'll see you again real soon.